All right, if you're a FERC compliance officer, you already know that neutrality isn't just some abstract rule. It's the absolute bedrock of everything you do. In this explainer, we're going to dig into the ZYRO HIVE protocol, but we're looking at it specifically through your lens, the lens of compliance, and most importantly, how it's engineered to protect RTO neutrality under Orders 888 and 1000.
And that, right there, is the heart of the matter. This quote really sets the stage for our entire conversation. The whole system we're about to unpack is built from the ground up to defend this principle, not to chip away at it.
So just to be clear, this is a focus briefing. It's structured for regulatory analysis. This isn't a sales pitch. We're here to get under the hood, look at the mechanics, and really examine the protocol's architecture from your point of view, the compliance point of view.
Okay, let's start with the first big idea. How can any protocol possibly interact with the grid without messing with the RTO's core mission? Well, the answer is in this simple but really powerful concept, coordination without control. Think about it like the Waze app on your phone. Waze doesn't go out and build new highways, right? It doesn't change traffic laws. It just uses the information it has to help you find the best path through the system that already exists. That's exactly the principle here. ZYRO HIVE coordinates the capital and the authorities that are already out there. It doesn't try to take them over. This is a huge difference from so many grid modernization plans that demand big, fundamental changes to how the RTO operates.
Now, this idea is enforced by something the protocol calls a constitutional separation of duties. So let's look at the very specific, hard lines that define the RTO's role here. Take a look at this table. What the RTO provides, the grid context, is incredibly limited and, by design, neutral. You're providing the definition of a grid point, the structure for market data, and of course, the non-negotiable reliability constraints. And the most important part is that constitutional limit. All of this has to be provided impartially. You can't play favorites.
And what you don't provide is maybe even more important for compliance. The RTO does not provide capital. You're not directing what any participant does, and you absolutely positively do not take an ownership stake in the regenerative entity, or RE, that gets formed. This is the firewall. This is what prevents capture and maintains your independence.
This diagram really shows that separation perfectly. See, on one side, you have the RTO's world, just providing that neutral grid context. On the other side, you've got the participants, controlling their own capital. That constitutional guardrail in the middle is a hard stop. It makes sure those two worlds can talk to each other without one controlling the other. And you know what? If you, the RTO, ever spot a direct reliability conflict, that guardrail gives you the power to hit pause on the whole thing.
Okay, so if the RTO isn't putting up investment capital, then how does any of this get started? Well, this leads us to what's called the ignition model, and it frames the RTO's role in a way that should feel pretty familiar: research and development. The RTO's role is simply to commission a circuit discovery. Now, this isn't an investment in a project, it's funding an R&D study to find valuable grid intelligence. And this lines up beautifully with the precedent in FERC Order 1000, which already allows RTOs to fund these kinds of planning studies as long as the benefits and the data are shared with everyone, non-discriminatorily.
Let's trace the money, because this is critical. 1. The RTO commissions the study as R&D. 2. ZYRO HIVE does the work. 3. The market participants look at the data, they see the value, and they decide to form an RIE, putting down a 1% retainer to get started. And 4. That retainer immediately reimburses the RTO for that initial R&D cost.
And that's the key takeaway. Zero. Net cost. The RTO is made whole. There's no profit, no ongoing financial stake, no risk of being left on the hook. It's a pure cost recovery mechanism, not a payment for services.
And this whole flow of funds, it's not just some clever workaround. It's designed to align with the principles of FERC Order 719, which establishes that RTOs can be a neutral administrator of payments without directing them or getting any benefit. You're just a pass-through for the cost recovery, which keeps that crucial arm's-length relationship with the market intact.
Okay, but what about the data you get back? Could getting all this new grid intelligence be seen as a form of operational capture? Let's dive right into that question.
This is the question that any sharp compliance officer is going to ask. If the RTO gets all this valuable new data, does that somehow compromise your independence? Well, the answer is no, and it comes down to really understanding the kind of intelligence you're getting and the framework around it. To break this down, we can actually look at the Nobel Prize-winning work of Elinor Ostrom on something called polycentric governance. Her research on complex systems showed it's actually normal and healthy for coordinating bodies, like an RTO,
to get resources back to help them manage the system. There are just two big rules. The resources have to be transparent, and they can't lead to capture.
This table makes Ostrom's distinction really clear. Look at the left column. It's perfectly fine to receive non-directional, system-wide intelligence that just makes you better at your job of coordinating. But the right column, that's what's prohibited, getting secret data that advantages one player or telling participants what to do with their money. The intelligence from ZYRO HIVE, it lives squarely in that first permitted column.
So, let's shift gears a little. We've talked a lot about avoiding risk, but this isn't just about not breaking the rules. The protocol is actually designed to give you new tools to affirmatively prove you are meeting your mandate.
You can literally go down the checklist for FERC Order 888. Independence? Check. You don't own the REO. Non-discriminatory access? Check. The main data deliverable, the scalar digital twin, is shared with everybody. No undue preference? Check. Your grid context is impartial. It's a one-to-one match.
And let's get specific about the tools you get. First, the scalar digital twin. This dynamic model of a grid point helps you nail the shared planning data requirements from Order 1000. Then there's the Sovereignty Fidelity metric, which gives you hard, auditable data to prove stakeholder engagement. And finally, by verifying that local obligations are met before a project even gets to you, it can massively reduce the transaction costs and headaches of managing those interconnection queues.
This all leads us to our final point. Why looking into a protocol like this isn't taking on a new risk, but is actually an act of proactive regulatory diligence. So what's the worst-case scenario? You commission the discovery, and nothing happens. The market participants decide not to form an entity. This is where the failure is data principle is so important. Even in that outcome, you have still gained an incredibly valuable piece of grid intelligence, that scalar digital twin, at zero net cost. You've successfully completed an R&D project to explore new ways to fix congestion. From a diligence perspective, that's a win.
And that is the final takeaway. Every piece we've looked at today, the guardrails, the R&D model, the cost recovery, the type of intelligence, it is all built from day one for affirmative FERC risk mitigation. It's about giving you more visibility and better tools to strengthen your compliance, not expose it.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on, and it's rooted in the work of economist George Akerlof. He showed that information asymmetry, when one side knows a lot more than the other, is what creates massive problems in a market. RTOs face this reality every single day. So maybe, just maybe, the greatest risk isn't exploring a new protocol that's built on transparency, but trying to keep managing the grid with the blind spots you already have.